Hi, this is Joe Quattrocchi, and I'm very grateful today to be able to chat with a person who I greatly admire. He is a first-class journalist. He is the managing editor of EWTN, lead anchor of The World Over. He is Raymond Arroyo. Thank you for chatting with me.
Well, thank you, and your bad taste. Thank you. We'll give you a pass on that.
Excellent. You promised not to take over this interview.
No, I won't do that. I would never do that, Joe.
All right, thank you. Now, you started at EWTN 1996, just about the same time as Doug Keck.
That's right.
Now, your transition from the secular world into Catholic media, could you briefly share how that happened?
Well, it was a call from Mother Angelica. I was asked to do a piece, a magazine piece on Mother Angelica. I had written at the Associated Press. I'd done print journalism, and I was in TV at the time. They asked me to come down to Birmingham. I met her. We connected because I think largely because of our shared Italian heritage. We just kind of got each other. As I left, she said, "Why don't you come down here and start a news operation with me?" And I said, okay, but not really. Maybe we can talk about it later. And I left. And months later, events transpired. I got a phone call from her, and it was at the right moment. I've written about this since. And I had a long day. It was a correspondence dinner. And you could see the lobbyists around the room sort of dropping envelopes with everybody. And I turned to my wife and I said, "This is what I cover every day. Look at your democracy in action. Just look at this." And I was, the whole way home, I'm fulminating about, well, I'm wasting my life. I'm wasting my time. This is ridiculous. Blah, blah, blah. I get home, it's 11 o'clock at night and the phone rings. Hello? Well, you ready to come down here? I said, "Who is this?" She said, "Mother." I said, "This is my mother. Who is this?" I did not know. It had been months. I truly did not know who it was. Well, she finally said, "It's Mother Angelica. Why don't you come down here, take a look?" And I said, "Well, she said, "Bring your wife. It'll be good for your soul." And that was kind of the Venus flytrap moment. And here I am 20 years later, still stuck in the grip.
No, you're doing wonderfully. And let me say that nobody does a better job in terms of being a journalist. And this is not my opinion alone. I'm going to take you back 2000, 2001. You did an interview, hopefully you remember it, Jim Fossil, former coach of the New York Giants.
I do.
Now this blew me away. Jim Fossil, Super Bowl coach, he gets interviewed by everybody. Once you make the Super Bowl, you are an international interviewer, right? Because everybody wants to go to the Super Bowl. Everyone's interviewing. And you did a post-Super Bowl interview with Jim Fossil. He said you were the most prepared, the best journalist he had ever sat down with. And I said, boy, this guy really has it.
Yeah, no, he was very kind. Well, look, I always try to dig out something new from every interview I talk to. I mean, that's kind of my personal little mandate. Get something new and create an environment where they're so at ease that they will unveil and reveal those things that perhaps they haven't before. So that's, you do that. You do that for the audience, and that's what they've come to expect over time. And, it's kind of become our hallmark over many years. And that's with the help. Look, I've had a producer who's been with me for almost 18 years, Chris Edwards, and an associate producer, James Faulkner, who's been with me for more than a decade. So when you have a team that works, it makes everything move easier. I can then do my research, I can prepare for the interview, and I know they're taking care of so many of the other things. So it is not a solo act. There are a lot of people behind the scenes moving to make sure it's smooth and it looks pretty when they see it at home, even though it's ugly in the making, I can tell you.
That's very nice of you to admit that.
No, it's true.
It is true. Now, EWTN has done probably the best job in terms of defining pro-life issues, breaking them apart, giving the public really something countercultural, because you're not going to see it on the broadcasts of ABC, NBC, CBS. They don't cover the pro-life perspective as well as EWTN, for whatever reason. I'm not going to place any blame here or there. But could you share a little bit, because we are at the Father Benedict Groeschel Annual Awards, and Doug Keck will be receiving the Life Award on behalf of our dearly departed Mother Angelica. So life is very important to us at Good Counsel and all that we do. Can you share a little bit maybe about the feedback that you've gotten from the public in terms of EWTN's pro-life coverage, and maybe some people who you've opened the eyes to on this issue?
You mentioned these two great, amazing, not only Catholics, but Americans, Father Benedict Rochelle and Mother, who were not only dear friends, but united in this mission to bring the positive vision of life, a culture of life, to the country and to the world. And they both labored in different ways to do that. Father Benedict, in a very practical way, starting the Good Counsel homes with Chris Bell. Mother Angelica, as I discovered when I was working on the biography in the early 80s, remember Mother Angelica was an abandoned child of divorce. She and her mother lived alone under pretty tough circumstances for a while. The family even kind of shunned them after that divorce. And Mother Angelica in the 80s, I discovered, was looking into buying a big piece of property. She was going to create a farm with houses so that unwed mothers and their children could have a place to live in a family environment, which was, she kind of had this family, she would talk about her monastery, that it was a, it was a family environment. She later called the audience her family. And that was a motto and a guiding spirit I think Mother had and wanted to bring, to draw people together. So I see this as another face of that vision for not only life, but mothers, children, and a culture of life that is life-giving. It extends. It's not just words, it's action. And I think, in our small way, we just shine a camera on the witness and the faith of others. I mean, that's really what we do. And you mentioned Doug Keck earlier. The truth of the matter is, before I arrived at EWTN, when Doug came, we were the first people who decided we should air the pro-life march. That was never aired at EWTN before. They just didn't have the people to do it. So he really started that, and I was pleased at the very beginning. I was part of it. Now it's gone on. It's a day-long affair. We cover the day before, the day after, the vigil, and the whole march. But that was a big part, I think, of his input and guidance, and that continues today.
Since you are managing editor, I want to ask you a news question.
No, hopefully nothing to do with managing or editing.
Okay. EWTN, over the course of the last few years, has expanded, I think, from the viewer's standpoint, expanded their news. Now, radio, of course, is a different medium, and you've got hundreds of EWTN affiliates across the country, outside of the country. Radio is a different medium, so they're more apt to do news. But the television programming is embracing news. I see it. EWTN News Nightly, a great program. Now, is this something that you want to expand? Do you think that EWTN needs to do more news?
Well, I think more information is good information, and I think you want to inform people, as in a way that is authoritative. You want to bring them stories and people they haven't seen anywhere else, and that's what we labor to do day in and day out. That's certainly what we try to do, and finding those stories that are not being covered elsewhere. That, I think, is critical. And you don't want to, there's so much out there. There's a blizzard of information every day. I mean, if there's something you want to learn about, you can do it instantly. I always ask myself, what aren't we covering? What is being missed, falling through the cracks, that is really of importance to the viewers? And that's what you try to shine light on that. And look, my vision is also, I think you can get lost, as a guy who's covered Capitol Hill for almost 20 years, you can get lost covering government, the gears and the minutiae, the bureaucracy of government. That's rarely where the story is. The story is with the newsmakers themselves, with the people, with the places, with events that are happening. That's far more persuasive and powerful, I think, than Senator X has a bill and he wants to talk about it. I just don't think that has any stick-to-itiveness. It's not where we live. So my emphasis has always tried to be on newsmakers, those who are really shaping the culture, which is on a higher plane than government and the law, because culture moves the heart and mind of man. So I've tried to always balance that out. I think that's an important worldview to have when you go to news.
And it's interesting on so many levels, the world over in particular. What I really enjoy is that you're not afraid to get out of the Catholic circle, and your interview with Jerry Lewis was incredible.
You're the best interviewer, and I've had thousands of them in my life, and you're the best. Wow. You are articulate, you know what you're going to talk about, you're interested in the answer, that's the key. Yeah. You're interested in everything you ask me to see what the answer is, and that draws from me eager to do more for you.
And also Donald Trump on the campaign trail. EWTN was able to be mentioned because I'm in the greater New York area. Local talkers on talk radio, news radio,
we made
were
a lot of
mentioning
news.
EWTN because Donald Trump was being interviewed during the campaign. Is there a particular world over that you're especially proud of?
Oh, well, the next one. That's the one I always, keep my eye on. No, look, I think what I've always tried to do is, Catholic to me touches everything. I think we run into a problem when we have narrow casting and we kind of stay in our little lane and we only talk about things that are uber Catholic, obviously Catholic. I think that the church's wings are far and wide, and there are good works being done, and shades and reflections of the church all over the place. So I think it's up to us to find those people, find those events, shine some light on them. And in both of those instances, I mean, those are non-Catholics, Jerry Lewis and Donald Trump, but one was obviously of national importance and critical importance. Catholics had questions about this presidential nominee. We asked them, some of them hard. Have you changed since those comments made
Well, it was locker room talk. It was locker room talk.
hard, some of them fun. Are you saying bigly or big league?
I use big league.
I was
Good.
right. And we did make a lot of news with it, which I love, because then you magnify the power of that interview and the message. And I've always thought, news, even in Mother Angelica's conception, it was never to be the end of the line. That is not why EWTN was founded, to create news or to report news. We were an add-on. And as time went on, in fact, she told me at times, this is a hook. This is a hook. People want to know information. They want to see these people. Hopefully they watch that, and then they keep watching. That's part of the idea. I'm not an evangelist. I can't help you, on the road to salvation, but I can help shape you, form you, maybe in the culture, maybe in government, give you the information you need to go on. That's what we're called to do. So everybody kind of has their own work. And when I look at Father Benedict Rochelle, who this event tonight is in honor of, and Mother Angelica, who's being honored tonight, I see two faces of the same vision, which was to build a culture of life and to do it in powerful ways. Mother went to help the poor in spirit, to reach people in their need. Father Benedict Rochelle, when I spent nights with him at the soup kitchens here and at the Home for Men, in the Bronx, this is directly helping people in their needs, particularly and directly. So they were both really doing the same thing in different ways. And it's a beautiful, I think, reflection of how God orchestrates all of this in a certain amount of time. And they were given this great time, which they exploited and used to the full. And now it's up to us to carry on.
Can I ask you one bad question?
You can get one or two bad questions.
That's my trademark.
Can I give one or two bad answers?
Exactly. Yeah, that's my trademark. Can I ask you a bad question? So my bad question is, Mother Angelica often would say that she didn't care about ratings. Does Raymond Arroyo take that same stance? Or, don't you want to know that the Jerry Lewis interview went really well on EWTN?
Well, it's a bad question. And look, EWTN, I think, as a network, Mother's point was, and she said this sometimes to the frustration of some of us in the room, she would say, look, I don't care if 10 people are watching or 1 million people are watching. If the eternal word is hitting the highways and the schools and the apartment buildings and the hospitals, whether they can see it or not, there's something going out. So that was her kind of supernatural vision for this. So ratings, turning a profit, that was never her focus. She was not a media mogul. She was a contemplative who was asked to build a television and later a radio network. That's what she was called to do. And when that was over, she dropped that. She went on and continued her mission. But it was a contemplative one. It was to reach people spiritually, always. That was her focus. So, look, I'm a broadcaster. I'm an interviewer. I want people to see my interviews. And would I like 10 million to watch them? Absolutely. So I think if you have something good, particularly if you have a person or an idea or a vision that's not getting covered or that you haven't seen before, everybody should see that. So sure, I'd like everybody to watch. But am I checking ratings books? We don't do ratings. No. So I don't know. But yeah, I of course I want people to see good work, and I think most of what we do is good. The mistakes, I hope they don't see.
No, I haven't seen any mistakes, so you're doing an excellent job. Final question, and again, one more bad question.
Okay.
I'm sorry to end on a bad note.
That's okay.
how difficult was it to be there as an anchor and to cover Mother Angelica's funeral? I mean, you really were sort of an arm for all of us. I watched the funeral online. I was crying.
Yeah, it was very moving.
Everyone saw you choked up at the end. Wasn't that the roughest assignment you ever had?
It was. No, it was. Look, I feel blessed because I was allowed to spend that time, what I call her grand silence, those years of silence, when she was hidden away, when she went back to being a full-time contemplative. I was allowed to go in and see her, and we spent time together. I held her hand. I would read to her. I'd share notes with her. I'd talk to her. In the early years, she could talk a bit. Then as time went on, she fully lost her ability to speak. But to have been with her through all of that, and then working on the sequel to her biography, I thought, you're at peace with this, you've gone through her whole life, you're ready. And then the moment comes, and you're never ready. I mean, it's like, it really is, for me, she was, in many ways, like a mother to me, and a big part of my life. I mean, she gave me opportunities, she awakened, and had I think, a vision for me that, frankly, I didn't have for myself. So I'm so thankful to her. I'm so thankful that I had that time. And so for me, that was really my closure, that event. I don't know if it's closed yet, as you can see, but it was a big part of, for me, emotionally, kind of coming to terms with Mother's passing, because she was a lively part of my life those 15 years. Whereas for a lot of the public, I think, they had the reruns. They knew she was ill, but they didn't see her. So, I think it's easier when you've been away from someone for a long period and you find out they pass away. It was traumatic, I have to say. And there were days, that last day, I wasn't sure I'd get through it.
Yeah, but you did, and I want to congratulate you, as a viewer, and thank you, because you gave a real honest face to, and you expressed the emotion that so many of us were going through during that whole period.
Well, she was, the great lesson, one of the great lessons she gave me about broadcasting. Mother was exactly who she was, off camera or on. She gave emotions. When she was upset, she brought full Italian upset, okay? When she was happy, she'd bring great joy. But there was no veneer. So I felt in her passing, it's so important to bring passion and truth. Exactly. And that means being true to what you're going through and what everybody's going through in the moment. The artifice doesn't help. And I think, we did that. She had a fitting goodbye. And that's what we tried to create, not only me, the whole network. I mean, it was a week of programming. It was a beautiful coverage.
It really was beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Raymond, for all that you do.
Thank you.
Seen and unseen.
Seen and unseen. The unseen is ugly. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Pleasure.